Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and I'm doing something I haven't done on this channel in, actually ever I think. I'm doing a preview of a game. The fact is that normally I focus strictly on reviews because of, well, all the games to review or to get coverage on. But this one hits special for me. See, the game I'm previewing today, Tevy, was made by Cray-Spirit. They are the developers of Rabi-Ribi, one of the first games that I considered a gem that didn't get a lot of coverage, the real purpose of this channel. So having them come to me with a new Metroidvania game with bullet hell mechanics, just like Rabi-Ribi, yeah, I was interested. So this last weekend I played the demo, having about 3 hours of playtime and completing the main demo portion, but specifically not doing everything it had to offer. There seems to be extra bosses that may show up at the end of this video, but I wanted to get the coverage out there sooner rather than later. The demo did seem to change a couple of things from a story perspective to try to flavor the story for the demo, which was nice to see. Granted, you do get a general sense of the story and what it has to offer, though, otherwise. So what were my first impressions? Well, that the development team went out to create a more in-depth version of Rabi-Ribi, combat-wise and with a more in-depth story. And from what I've seen and played, they have delivered here. To say that I'm impressed with the demo would be a slight understatement. I do see a lot of potential here for the entire game, even more than what I played, and came out of the demo wanting to play the full game more than ever. There's obviously layers to this, but I'm going to start with what I consider the meat of the demo, the gameplay and the combat system. So the core of the game relies on the basic Metroidvania formula. You get a quest to go complete a task of some sort, and you need to navigate the environment and the enemies while avoiding damage and picking up resources. Movement starts simple in the demo, like typical Metroidvanias do, lacking secondary skills, no double jump, and lets you get accustomed to the base movement and combat, which the speed and control set here are good to start off with. You have enough ways to react to enemies and time to get away from their attacks without it being overly forgiving. I will say that the movement does open up when you get the air dash, especially from a dodging enemies view, but I wanted to play with a combat a bit more than getting through the level, so I didn't use it that much to get away from enemies. But regardless, moving in any case felt right, and especially when it came to combat. Combat is the biggest draw I think Tevy will have, because on the surface, it looks typical in terms of execution. You have a melee attack with a basic combo to start off with, and two helpers that act as a pseudo angel and devil on your shoulder, but not really. Each of the helpers have their own ranged attacks, however, that fires typical bullets that take mana, but really have different properties, especially when being shot at more full mana. Attacking with Sable, for example, will have the bullet hit the enemies and pierce them at lower MP values. But when using it at 100% or more MP, will hit the enemy and do repeated damage wherever it stops. Sort of like, just appearing on the screen as you can see here. Meanwhile, Celia's bullets seem to just do more damage in general, but seem to be more for bigger enemies and not multiple targets in my experience. So if you need more crowd control, go with Sable, but if you need the damage, go with Celia. You do have some basic skills at your disposal at first, such as a wrench spinning attack, as well as an uppercut-like launcher that can help you combo into more hits and help juggle enemies, which I did use a lot of. But that's the surface of the combat, because where the game really starts to shine is the sigil system. See, you get some points to put into the equivalent of skills and abilities via the sigil system, and with the demo being a couple of hours, you get a surprising amount of different options for them, and they can be significant. Of course, there's basic ones like 15% more HP or 15% faster combos, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about things like a sigil that will reduce the combo damage of one of your basic combos by 12.5%, but allows you to extend the combo beyond its typical couple of hits. Or it may add a whole new attack to the tornado spin if you get your combo over an A grade. In the limited time that I played, I found that you could really play around with loadouts and really take advantage of a particular playstyle that reminded me of games like Devil May Cry, but more in the 2D space. And it really worked here, especially comboing with the ranged attacks. When starting to get more sigils and playing around with them, the combat really opens up and gives you options, especially with the good enemy variety that the game throws at you in the demo. And even with me playing on the normal difficulty, I saw how much it impacted how I took on even the most common enemies. These big poisonous, beefy, sort of like Venus flytrap kind of things were a threat to me at first with my first loadouts, as they'd usually get some poison damage on me as I tried to whittle them down. But with slight adjustments to my combo string and the use of things like the tornado spin, it definitely became a lot easier to deal with them without taking precious HP damage. The fact that I was able to see this in the demo makes me think that there's a lot more options when the full game comes out, and it just makes me excited to play around with it and see what it has to offer, especially because I'll probably play on the higher difficulty during that time. I do like to try to play normal in most cases, just because, well, it's what most people will play, and that's what the reviewer should do if I can't play multiple difficulties at once. But here, yeah, I think I can't help but want the, tougher combat. What I will say about combat also is that one of the things that was clear to me from this demo is that the level designers really considered a lot of the choices that could be made with the sigils present, and really designed combat arenas and areas that actually forced you to change things up with enemy placement and skills. I found myself having to change up how I approached an enemy constantly with big gaps or even confined spaces. And never did I feel like the level design was just simple gimmicks in most cases. Again, this was only after 3 hours of playing the game, but it felt like a game that had been put through its paces. Except this spot, right here, this one. I fell down it several times without meaning to. Maybe make it clear where the spot is after falling down it once? Maybe? Although, many of the Rabi-Ribi fans will point out that the best part of that game was arguably its boss fights. And well, let me say something here that may be controversial from the get-go. I find that the balance in Metroidvania's boss fight difficulty versus reasonable discovery in many of them over the past several years have been skewed a little bit too much to the repeated death and learn side of things. It's the Dark Souls effect, of course, but it's also gone the other way a little bit as well, where sometimes bosses on the first attempt can be way too easy or under-designed. Without a doubt, one of the striking elements to me during my playthrough of Tevy was this boss fight. The boss fight makes me salivate at the idea of facing 5, 10, 15 more bosses like this. It hits a sweet spot of difficulty. The boss has several different attacks needing various movement patterns and foresight on where to place yourself to avoid damage, but the hits aren't so horribly punishing that one mistake would end the battle. The different phases of the battle changes things up enough to force you to adapt. And then there's the X factor of just making the player feel like a badass, with especially the dodging of the bullet hell element that you see on the screen here. I did die once to this boss, barely coming up short on the first attempt, but in that loss, I felt fantastic, ready to fight him again because it was so much fun. If the game can keep up this kind of momentum from even half of the boss fights in this game, you're looking at a must-have Metroidvania for any sort of player, even non-veterans of the genre, because, well, it's fun. Fun. I could talk more about the gameplay all day, but I do want to hit other elements of the demo, like the music. I did not expect the music to be this good. I don't know why. Rabi-Ribi's music was good, but this felt like at a surprisingly high level, almost on par with some of the best indies in the genre that probably had a lot higher budgets than this game. I mean, I could try to analyze why, what the uplifting beats does for the exploration, and how each instrument plays into it, but it's just easier to listen for yourself. Colors and presentation in general was also pretty great. They showed off a great gambit of different areas and model types, and I do like several of the different character designs that we got to see, both from a pixel and character cutscene / text box area artwork. It was all pretty good, and the only thing that really stood out to me for being a little off, honestly, was the default text box. I can't put my finger on why specifically. Maybe it's because the UI in the menus was so clean and aesthetically pleasing with the spacing and everything like that, that I wanted that to somehow move over to the text box inputs. But really, I'm picking at nitpicks here. That's the kind of game this is. I really enjoyed my time, and I really am struggling to come up with some negatives. There's also the story, and that's going to be the biggest question mark for me coming out of this. But not because the story that I experienced was bad. I mean, that's the thing. The demo seems to put you somewhere in the middle of the story, and adjusts the circumstances, like I mentioned earlier, to the demo. It's a good idea in theory, especially from a gameplay point of view, but it did become weird when the game started referencing things that I may have forgotten about or didn't know about. Maybe it was in Rabi-Ribi and this has got some information that is coming over, but I just don't know. But again, sort of expected in a demo like this. What I will say is that I did really enjoy the back and forth between Revi, Sable, and Celia. There's a good banter between them, and working off each other similar to what you'd see in JRPGs. And what really helped was that when the three of them would interact with someone else in the world. Sometimes with these helper characters, they can feel like the background noise and don't get to come to play when the grown-ups are talking. But that wasn't the case here. They felt really part of the world, and I really did enjoy seeing them interact with other people, with the limited amount that we saw. The writing does seem a tad bit more mature at times than the original Rabi-Ribi game, but the game still had a sense of humor and playfulness to it. Then again, it's been so long since I played Rabi-Ribi that I might have forgotten the story about it, so don't hold that against me. Look, I could go on and on here about my experience, but overanalyzing the game right now wouldn't serve a whole lot of good purpose. The fact is, I've seen a slice of the game and what it has to offer. But the reason that I took this preview beyond the fact that Rabi-Ribi has a place in my heart when it comes to this channel is to see if my excitement for this upcoming title is justified. And after putting my hands on it, yeah, it is. I almost want to say this is Rabi-Ribi Plus. They've seemed to learn small things when it comes to the gameplay, little details that come with experience. They've added to the skill type system to really reward players, and everything feels a little bit more polished than Rabi-Ribi was, even though Rabi-Ribi was polished pretty well. I mean, I'm gonna put it this way when it comes to my overall statement on the game. I'm probably going to take a day or two off of work just so that I can be sure that when this game releases, if I get a review copy, of course, that I can have the time to give the game the attention that it deserves. I'm gonna buy the game regardless, but, you know, review copy, be able to get a review up on when the game comes out so that everybody can see it. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because right now, this game is looking like a gem, and I really hope that it lives up to that potential. Thank you for watching the video. If you want more information about my experience with the game, you can join my Discord or, you know, hit me up on Twitter and ask a question. The fact is, I want to give you all the information that you need, and the fact is, I really want to see this game succeed. Now, if you like this format in terms of the previews, let me know. I don't do them often. Again, this is the first one I've ever done, and I want to know if this is the kind of information that you would like. Maybe I'll do more in the future, maybe I won't. I do like the focus on, you know, standard reviews, but, you know, if people want it, I will change things up a little bit. Anyway, later on in the week, you should have a review/first impressions of a Punch-Out parody game. It's going to be an interesting one because I ran into a couple of problems with the game. I'm not necessarily sure if it's just my setup, but we'll see. I hopefully will have something when the game releases on Friday. But for now, that's all I have. And as always, keep on gaming.